All right, this is a second recording of the Indred Cold incident. The first one had a lot of electronic problems, let's just say. Um, so, welcome. I'm William Nighthawk. I'm a researcher and an investigator into paranormal, supernatural, and everything bizarre, including cryptids. I've been doing it and interacting with all of the above for all of my life, actually, since the age of 3. So I've got some information to disclose. I did some research on the Indred Cold incident on November of 1966, the encounter that is not linked to the Point Pleasant Mothman incident, first off, by the way. Um, so it has nothing to do with the Mothman whatsoever. Um, Indrid Cold, also known as the grinning man or the smiling man, allegedly blocked the Route 77 interstate by Parkersburg, West Virginia, um, for a man that was coming back from selling vacuums. He was a vacuum cleaner salesperson. And I'm not going to disclose his name. You can look up his name. Um, well, I'll give you the initials. It's WD. Okay. Um, those of you that know, you know. He has had several incidences after that November 1966 initial contact. Um, this being, like I said, blocked the road. He was in a craft that was described kind of like a lantern, um, which landed in front of his vehicle, stopping his vehicle on Interstate 77 near Parkersburg, West Virginia, in November of 1966. And he approached the passenger side of the vehicle, and at first he just had a slight smile on his face, and his lips didn't move at all when he was talking to Woodrow Derringer, okay, or Darren Berger, excuse me. And he basically mind speaked to him, to Woodrow. And ever since that initial contact, Woodrow had other encounters with this individual. I have had my own personal encounters with this same individual. I've had it twice. Since I've gotten cancer, it's been more of a heightened activity. Okay, so I don't know if this is a representation of something supernatural that's just waiting for people to become unalived. It's just one thing after another. Anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, okay? That being said, I'm going to read a disclaimer. As always, I claim fair use of any and all content under the Copyright Act of 1976. Furthermore, I wish to acknowledge that not all the opinions and theories mentioned during the podcast are not necessarily the opinions or views of Nighthawk High Strange podcast channel, or AKA Nighthawk myself. We at Nighthawk High Strange's YouTube channel and Facebook channel merely bring the open format of discussion for the possibilities of topics happening in the past, present, and future. Please join the Nighthawk High Strange's YouTube channel by subscribing and hit that like button on your way out, okay? And ring that bell icon to all. Okay, that being said, we're going to get into this whole thing. Okay, November 1966 is the beginning of all of the encounters that Woodrow Derenberger had. Okay, um, it's kind of odd to describe when you have this type of a being come to you. Okay, he is not. Some people are going to classify it as a UFO alien type of encounter. To me personally, it was above and beyond that stage. It was something that was supernatural because he didn't just turn and walk away. He literally just turned a little bit from my window and disappeared. Like he just walked into a doorway and the invisible door closed behind him, and that was it. Okay. Didn't see any UFO. But, you know, he was described in the original encounter in 1966 as being 7 foot tall, olive skin, and this grin that went literally from cheekbone to cheekbone. And that's what I encountered. 7 foot tall. Um, Indred Cold was also described as having a dark blue um, uniform on, but in my encounter, he had a dark blue, like a navy blue, kind of like a duster or a long trench coat. And that's all you could see. You didn't see anything else. Okay. And he was every bit of 7 foot tall at my window. Okay. He took up the entire window. He wasn't as broad. He was narrow built, kind of like a human. Okay. But the creepy thing about it was that when he spoke to you, his lips didn't move. Okay. They didn't move at all. He mind speaked or used telepathy or something to introduce himself to me. Now, when he introduced himself to me, he didn't use the name Indred Cold. This leads me to believe that there is multiple of these beings. And the reason I say that is because when you consider the biblical aspect of supernatural, we talk about the fallen angels and how there was 200 of them and how they were said to be the watchers of humanity and this world. Okay. And what we're experiencing now with these encounters is kind of the same thing. He introduced himself as a controller to me, not an individual name, but as a collective name for the entire group of them. Okay. So, that being said, is it something alien? I don't believe so. I believe it's a supernatural entity. And I believe that they had some kind of like of a supernatural about them entity about them that or energy about them that almost made them angelic at one point. Okay, even fallen angels are still angels. Okay, and they're called different names around the world in all different cultures. They're called archons, they're called demons, they're called, whatever you want to call them, fallen angels, demigods. Okay, they're literally called all these things in all these other cultures around the world. Okay, now the one thing I did interpret, and I do a lot of research on finding patterns in things. Okay, whether it's the simulation theory or Project Blue Beam and all this other stuff. I look for specific patterns. Okay, and in his name alone, I found several, and the main one was Oracle. The letters of his name spelled the word Oracle. It also spelled the word Orel, okay, which is interpreted as a word representing the word border or in between, okay. And what I interpret that as is like what we call the veil. They see as just another border in between the dimensions, in between whatever you want to call it, the dimensions, the parallel worlds, the heavens, whatever you want to call them, you call them whatever you want. But in between, there is borders, and we call it the veil. And we have said for the longest time that this veil has been thinning. Well, they use this veil to cross over and come into our world. Okay. And they assume forms that we can relate to. Okay. So this is something that is very specific in the whole history of encounters with Indred Cold and other beings like him. Okay. They sometimes, and Derenberger went on to have several encounters, including being taken away and taken to their home galaxy of wherever this being came from. Okay. Well, the same thing happened with Betty and Barney Hill in the 60s. Okay. We have been under a microscope for a very long time. And these beings that call themselves Indred Cold, call themselves periodically aliens. They call themselves, and I'm just going to toss this word out there too, Anunnaki. Okay, they call themselves all these different names around all these cultures around the world. But I know them as the controllers. And to me, that's a representation, a collective word representing the fallen angels. That's my own opinion from my own research. Okay. You can do your own research, develop your own, find out your own patterns in the whole thing. But like I've always said, you have to look for the patterns, whether it's numerical patterns, whether it's color coded patterns. If you see a lot of red and blue, if you see a lot of 333, these are patterns to look for. Okay. So if you have this type of an encounter with this being, I did not feel any aggression from this being. I did not feel any way of evil from this encounter that I had. It was merely just a conversation, mind speaking back and forth. And that's all it was. And I had the encounter twice with this being. Okay. And it was every bit of 7 foot tall, narrow structure. Okay. Physical structure, human looking, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, neck, everything. The creepiest thing about it was he had dark red hair. Okay. And that smile that went across his face from cheek to cheek and showed his teeth. And it's, let me tell you, if you encounter it, it's something you never forget. Okay. So we're going to be doing a full documentary series on this. This is just the initial one to inform everybody what's going to go on with the investigation and give you some insight into what I'm going at it as. Okay. So that being said, everybody have a great evening. Enjoy it and enjoy your day. Enjoy your whatever you're doing, whether it's around the holiday season or not. Enjoy it. And we will be getting back with you very, very soon. Thank you.